It must have been long past midnight. Even the back streets of the town were completely empty now. Only yellowing street lamps and the cold wind drifting between them remained. This small town at the foothills of Nagano's mountains was surrounded by ancient pine forests, famous for trees older than memory itself. At the very heart of that forest, at the top of a long flight of stone steps, stood a Shinto shrine whose construction date was lost to history. Perhaps a century old, perhaps far older. Haruki Mizuno could not sleep that night. From the bedroom window of his modest home, he watched the narrow path leading toward the shrine. He worked as an accountant for a forestry company, a quiet, rule-abiding man who had never harmed anyone in his life. But what he had endured in recent months had shaken him deeply. False accusations at work, an embezzlement investigation, blame forced upon him. He could barely look his family in the eyes anymore. Behind all of it stood one man, his boss, Kenichi Toda. Haruki opened the envelope on his desk once more. Inside were several strands of Toda's hair. He had paid the office cleaning woman to obtain them. His hands trembled as he sealed the gray envelope again. The straw doll was ready. For weeks, he had researched obsessively. Old books in the library, obscure internet forums, even an elderly man at an antique shop. All of them led to the same answer: Ushi no Koku Mairi, the shrine visit at the Ox Hour, Japan's oldest and darkest curse ritual. The doll waited inside an old wooden chest. Haruki remembered how his hands shook while crafting it, twisting straw into human form, placing the hair strands inside along with a signed document from Toda and a small photograph. He had painted crude eyes onto its face with dried ink. Long iron ritual nails, Gosunkugi, rested in a separate metal box. The clock struck 1. Haruki stood up. He had prepared the costume beforehand, a white kimono tied tightly with a white obi. When he looked into the mirror, he barely recognized himself. The white paint covering his skin turned his face into something lifeless, like a funeral mask. He placed the iron trivet upside down upon his head. 3 candles burned steadily despite the faint draft. A wooden hammer in one hand, the straw doll in the other, the metal box tied at his waist. He opened the door without making a sound, barely breathing so as not to wake his wife. Outside, the harsh, cold air struck his face. His white garments fluttered lightly in the wind. The path to the shrine was deserted at this hour. Yet strangely, Haruki did not feel alone. As he walked deeper into the forest, he sensed the trees watching him, as if they were living things. The wind changed its voice, whispering through the branches. Aside from the crunch of pine needles beneath his feet, the world was drowned in deathly silence. When the stone steps began, he lost count of them. 50, 100. His legs grew heavy, yet he continued climbing. The candle flames trembled but refused to go out despite the wind. Realizing this sent a strange unease through him, a crawling anxiety he forced himself to ignore. He slowed to a halt as he entered the shrine grounds. The courtyard was oddly illuminated despite the dim moonlight. The stone lanterns were dark, yet everything remained visible. And there, at the center of the courtyard, stood a massive pine tree leaning against ancient stone railings. The Shinboku, the dwelling place of kami spirits. Haruki approached the tree. Its bark bore centuries of cracks and scars. Within some of those fissures were rusted remnants of iron nails, traces left by previous curse-bearers. 10 years ago, perhaps, or 100. The doll suddenly felt unbearably heavy in his hands. He picked up the first nail. Outside the shrine, hidden in shadow, Someone was watching. Haruki had sensed it but refused to acknowledge it. He did not want his mind to play tricks on him. Asami Fujikawa was considered the town's elder grandmother. 83 years old, yet remarkably healthy, her back straight, her gaze sharp. She had not slept that night either. Something from the mountain had awakened her, not a sound exactly, more like a feeling, a warning that ached deep within her bones. She remembered 40 years ago, a night just like this one. Someone had performed Ushi no Kokumeri at this very shrine. She wished she could forget what happened, but memory does not grant mercy. She remembered the one who cast the curse. She remembered the victim, and worst of all, what became of both. Asami remained still, gripping her cane. She knew the rule. If you witness the ritual, the curse turns toward you, and the practitioner must kill the witness. So she melted into darkness and held her breath. The man in the courtyard wore white. The costume was accurate. The trivet, the candles, the straw doll. This was no impulsive act. The man had studied. He knew what he was doing. That difference mattered. When the gosunkugi pierced the tree, the sound echoed through the forest. Asami trembled, because immediately afterward another sound answered from beyond the shrine. Distant, faint, almost carried by the wind. She recognized it. It was not a yurei, not a yokai, something far older. When Haruki returned home after the first night, his kimono was soaked with sweat. The metallic scent of the nails lingered on his hands. He had driven 5 nails into the tree: arm, leg, chest, abdomen, shoulder. The last 2 would be for the head and heart. The ritual would last 7 nights. Most accounts agreed on that. On the second night, something strange happened. Kenichi Toda twisted his knee while walking to work. There was no cause. He simply collapsed on flat pavement. Not broken, but swollen and bruised. Haruki hid his trembling hands beneath his desk when he heard the news. On the third night he hesitated as he approached the shinboku. Something on the bark caught his eye. A shape he did not remember seeing before, not carved, pushed outward from within the tree itself. A face, its mouth open. He forced himself forward and drove 2 more nails. But as he descended the steps afterward, he felt breath against the back of his neck. He turned. Nothing. Only darkness and the silhouettes of pine trees. On the 4th night, Toda fell gravely ill. A fever beyond explanation. Medication failed. Doctors were confused. He complained constantly of sharp pains in his hands, like needles piercing his skin. The 5th night was the worst. Haruki saw a woman standing before the shinboku. White clothing, long loose hair, no visible face. She turned, or seemed to, yet he saw only pale emptiness beneath the hair. Then she vanished. Haruki fled in panic, running barefoot down the stone steps, falling, bleeding, not stopping until he reached town. He locked himself inside and left every light on until morning. On the 6th day, Asami waited for him. Haruki stepped out of the market carrying a small bag when the old woman suddenly stood in his path. Small, slightly hunched, yet her eyes were sharp enough to stop him cold. "Stop," she said. "Just stop." Haruki froze. "I know everything," she continued calmly. "I saw you on the first night. I stayed in the shadows. I made no sound. Look at me. I didn't come here to kill you." Haruki couldn't speak. They sat at a small table inside her home. Steam rose from the tea she poured. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. 40 years ago, she began, a woman in this town performed Ushi no Koku Meri. She wanted revenge on her husband. He left her and married another woman. She had no children, no money, nowhere to go. Haruki swallowed. She completed the ritual. Asami stared at him for a long moment. Yes, the husband died. A brain hemorrhage. Within 3 weeks. She paused. But the woman died too. Silence filled the room. The neighbor who witnessed her never reported anything. The town buried the story. But the woman changed after the ritual. Something attached itself to her. She wasn't herself anymore. Her voice lowered. They found her in the forest a year later. Her body had marks. She raised 7 fingers slowly. 7 punctures. Haruki felt cold spread through his chest. The thing you call, Asami whispered, does not carry only your hatred. It has its own hunger. You think you are using it, but it is using you. She leaned closer. And when it finishes eating your anger, it will start eating you. After their conversation, fear settled inside Haruki like ice. He had wanted justice, nothing more. Yet now he realized the ritual demanded balance, not fairness. The guilty and the summoner both paid. That night he decided not to go. He repeated it to himself again and again. 6 nights, 6 nails. The last one, the head. 6 nights, 6 nails. Toda was still alive, though terribly ill. Haruki sat at his desk, staring at the straw doll. Memories flooded him. Accusations, humiliation, his wife's silence, his child asking, "Dad, when will you be normal again?" His eyes filled with tears he could not release. The clock read 12:45 a.m. He picked up the doll, then the nail. He stopped. Through the window he saw the path leading toward the shrine, and standing at its entrance, a white figure. Long hair, no visible face, waiting. Haruki stepped back from the window. The figure did not move. Was it waiting for him? Or had something already begun? Asami's words echoed. The thing you call has its own hunger. The clock passed 1. Haruki did not leave the house. The figure remained there, waiting, waiting, and when dawn finally arrived, it vanished with the first light of morning. Kenichi Toda died on the 7th morning. Haruki learned the news from a co-worker's phone call. Sudden brain hemorrhage. Doctors could do nothing. The family was in shock. Haruki ended the call slowly. He expected relief, victory, closure. Instead, he felt hollow, as if something inside him had been removed, leaving only cold emptiness behind. He stared at his desk. Numbers, papers, a life built on routine. Toda was dead, but the 7th nail had never been driven. That evening, his wife asked quietly, "Why do you look so pale? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," he answered. It was a lie. Since the phone call, he constantly felt breath behind his head. Whenever he turned, nothing. That night he dreamed of the shrine. He stood before the Shinboku. The tree did not speak, yet he understood its meaning. "I took it for you. Now you owe me." He woke with pain in his hand. 7 small red marks dotted his fingers, like punctures. Centuries ago, an 8th century wooden artifact was discovered in Nara, a doll pierced through the chest with an iron nail. Even when iron was rare, the ritual already existed. Centuries passed. The ritual never changed. The Shinboku still stands in the town. Its bark holds cracks filled with rusted remnants of old curses. And if one looks carefully, newer marks can also be seen. Recent ones. Haruki Mizuno still lives there. Neighbors say he walks slowly now, dragging his feet. He always wears gloves, even in summer. When people meet him in hallways, he avoids eye contact. One morning, Asami found him sitting at the shrine steps, holding the broken straw doll like a child. "It's over," he said quietly. "Isn't it over?" Asami did not answer. Some truths only deepened the curse when spoken aloud. That morning, something new appeared on the Shinboku's bark. Something she had seen once before, 40 years earlier. A shape pushing outward from within the tree. A mouth, smiling. Ushi no kokumari, cho no kekanri. The shrine visit at the ox hour remains one of Japan's oldest curse rituals. The Wara Ningyo doll, the Gosunkugi nails, the sacred Shinboku tree. Traditions carried across centuries. Shrines such as Kifune Jinja in Kyoto and small temples near Kiyomi-zudera are still said to bear the marks of iron nails. And those who attempt the ritual today may face legal consequences under Japanese law. But law does not erase belief, and the ox hour comes every night.